going on, YouTube universe? Welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, where we discuss everything Australian rules football. And with another round of AFL action kicking off later tonight, it is time for us to get our tips in. But before we do so, we need to rewind and take stock of round 13. The previous round, how well did we go? We did absolutely terribly. It is the worst round of tipping I have had all year. And if anything has been proven this season, it's that we can't put stock in what a team did the week prior heading into the following week, because that's been thrown out the window. Teams perform well one week and then the next week they get absolutely shit on. Teams lay down and get absolutely rolled one week and then come out victorious the next. It is so hard to get a proper bearing on where teams sit this year, and I feel round 13 definitely, pushed that fact. As you can see on screen, I only got 3 out of 8. And at one point I thought I was only going to get 1 or 2 out of 8. I'm just thankful that a couple of teams late in the piece were able to get over the line for me. We backed Geelong by 17 points, knowing that Geelong over the last 3 outings had defeated Adelaide by less than a 20-point margin. And Adelaide managed to pick up a 1-point win in a game where, apart from maybe one quarter late in the third, Adelaide had all the momentum their way. Hawthorn, we had them to back themselves against the Bulldogs for a second time this year. Bulldogs came out and put it back on their terms. They pick up a win by 6 points. We then get our first win of the round, Fremantle, on an absolute rampage. 12 in a row and absolutely trouncing North Melbourne by over 120 points. We backed the Gold Coast at People's First, and Brisbane, after 3 weeks in a row of not being able to pick up a win, turned around and said, you little boys can go and get fucked. It's time for the big brothers to win this one. And they did so very comfortably. We backed West Coast at home, probably to my detriment a little bit, but we've seen West Coast defeat Port Adelaide in Adelaide, and how we saw West Coast perform only 2 weeks ago back on their home deck. I thought they were a real red hot chance here, and they were, but they fell by the way of one singular goal. We backed Sydney against St Kilda, which came down to the final 30 seconds of the game, the ball getting tapped down to Isaac Heaney. Isaac Heaney gets a handball out to Jai Sarong. The rest is history. Carlton over Essendon was all but a formality. I thought it was going to be a bigger margin than this. I actually give credit to Essendon for hanging in as tough as they did. And then we backed Collingwood to defeat Melbourne. And Collingwood had a comfortable enough lead at one point in time, but Melbourne coming back to win the game by 8 points. We had a lot of close games over the course of the round, minus the blowout from Fremantle and the bigger win by Brisbane. Every other game was pretty much dictated by at least 8 points, which is absolutely incredible to see. But 3 out of 8, very abysmal. I am hoping there are some people in my competition that managed to do a lot better than I did. And thankfully we did. 6 out of 8 was the most correct amount of tips done by any tipster in my competition this week, and there were 5 tipsters that managed to do so. So congratulations to Master Tipper from PA, Some Cripple, Brisbane Rule, P. John W, and Footy Campfire for tipping the most correct amount of tips this week. Turning attention to total tips, to no surprise, Welsh Duke, Duncan P, holding it down for another particular round, still 3 tips clear, and has been a very consistent and big supporter of mine with all the content that I do here on this channel, but back when I was even doing this on my gaming channel as well. And there's a few of you in the competition this year that fall under the same mantle. So I just want to take the time to thank everybody who has come along with this journey so far. I'm looking to push this to bigger and better things, and I'm so glad you guys are here for the ride. But Welsh Duke, congratulations for being on top once more. The top 10 rounds out with Evelyn May, Skyvo, Master Tipper from PA, Some Cripple, Big Kev Shendo, Ron Schill, Jonesy, Team Wiggles, and Dusty Fendoff, with myself and Christopher W, as well as Gramercy Riff 78, all equally tied for that 10th slot. Congratulations to my top 10. Thank you to all 35 members that are a part of this comp, and a special congratulations once more to Welsh Duke as I stumble and bumble my way through this video for being on top of the ladder once more. But maybe this week I can tip some games that might get me back up the ladder again, who knows. Let's turn our attention to round 14. Round 14 is a 7-game round because of the buys. We have 4 teams sitting it out this week. We are kicking things off tonight. The Bulldogs taking on Adelaide. This is going to be an absolutely cracking game, especially given the fact it's at Marvel. I remember these 2 teams last year late in the piece taking each other on, and as you can see on screen, it was Adelaide by the slimmest of margins. We then have a face-off we had earlier this year at Adelaide Oval, where the Bulldogs managed to get away with a very tight win as well. But that was very much on the side of the Bulldogs having a more complete outfit to take to the field. Now, I don't know the ins and outs for this game yet. I might just take a beat here to try and see if I can see who the ins and outs are. That way we can make a definitive decision, because I feel the Bulldogs winning this game, despite being favourites, despite being at Marvel Stadium, hinges on some particular ins and outs. So we have, for the Bulldogs, Luke Kennedy making his debut over Lachie McNeil, who's out injured. For Adelaide, we have Nick Murray, Riley Thilthorpe and Luke Pedler coming in. Jordan Butts out injured. Calamarchi out injured, Taylor Walker out with suspension. Now, it's an interesting thing with Jordan Butts, because that now means Josh Worrell has to be more accountable in the way of not being able to really peel off and intercept all too much. He's going to have to play more one-on-one. Locking down on Aaron Norton will probably be the look here. Now, Bulldogs are also on a 3-game win streak as well. Let's take that into consideration. Back at Marvel Stadium, they looked good last week. They've actually looked good the last couple of outings at Marvel, actually. And while Adelaide played well last week against Geelong, I just think Bulldogs might have their number this time. I'm going to go the Bulldogs, and I'm going to go the Bulldogs by 13 points. I think it's going to be an incredibly close game. Friday night, Geelong, Gold Coast, GMHBA. Now, Gold Coast were absolutely pantsed by Brisbane on their home deck last week. Geelong win this game comfortably for mine. Looking at the form guide, the last time these teams played, Gold Coast absolutely rolled them earlier this year at People's First. But again, different mitigating circumstances. I feel, as you can see, both teams coming off of 2 losses back-to-back. But I think Geelong have been playing a better and more sustainable brand of football. Prior to that, obviously, Geelong beating them in GMHBA, and then the Gold Coast again a few years ago, not a few weeks ago, beating them by 64 points. They seem to get the better of Geelong on their home deck. Geelong has the better of them when it comes to GMHBA. I just think Geelong are primed to absolutely tear this game apart. Saturday, the first of a few, we have Melbourne hosting Essendon. The form guide will show that Essendon defeated Melbourne earlier this year in a game where they played absolutely out of their skin. Nobody expected to see Essendon play as well as they did in this particular game. But different circumstances have kind of swung around. You can see here Essendon have not been able to pick up a win for a very long time, despite the competitive nature against Carlton last week. I am going to go Melbourne here. I don't know whether Essendon have an upset in them like they did earlier this year. I think maybe that could have been just a one-off performance. I don't expect Melbourne to lay down 2 times this year to Essendon. Melbourne are going to come out, especially after how they played in the King's birthday game this past Monday. They're going to be hard to stop. They're going to run absolutely rampant. North Melbourne, Eagles, Optus Stadium. Funny that North Melbourne are actually going into this game at Optus as the home team, because they've obviously sold a game to Perth. And as you can see, the last time these two teams played in Perth, West Coast got the better of North Melbourne. North Melbourne getting the better of them last year by 10 points, and then it was West Coast the year before. This is more of a coin flip than I think people would care to admit here. Eagles have been putting in some great performances. This is a game where West Coast are coming off of losing only by a goal to Port Adelaide. North Melbourne coming in with a chip on their shoulder, losing by 120 plus points to Fremantle, who I feel at this point in time have one hand on the Premiership Cup. They're playing absolutely brilliant football. Hard to gauge, but which way do we swing? I'm going to go West Coast by the slimmest of margins, tentative to change depending on who lines up for each team. Obviously, when teams are announced for these games, I can get a bit of bearing, but I'm going to go West Coast here. I liked infinitely better the game that West Coast put up last week against Port Adelaide than the lack of effort that I saw from North Melbourne last week against Fremantle. Final game of Saturday, we see Port Adelaide hosting Sydney Swans. Bringing up the form guide, it has been Sydney 2 of the last 3 outings, and even when Sydney did lose last year, it was by a very slim margin of 8 points. Very hard to back against Sydney here, especially given how well they are currently tracking. I don't think Port Adelaide will come within 5 goals of Sydney. 2 games on Sunday, the first of which is Richmond hosting Brisbane down at Ninja Stadium in Hobart. Yes, you heard that correctly. Now, Brisbane have beaten us the last 3 times. Had Brisbane not defeated the Gold Coast, I was very tempted to back Richmond off of the bye here just as an upset tip. But Brisbane, I think, just getting that momentum back, just Logan Morris having a big game off his own boot, Lachie Neale chopping up a lot of the ball off of his own boot. It's hard to back against Brisbane here, right? I'm happy for Richmond to upset me in many ways if we can pick up an upset win. Richmond are due to have an upset win. Down at Hobart, I feel, gives us enough mutual grounding that we could potentially upset here, but we're going to go Brisbane. And the final game of the round is St Kilda hosting GWS at Marvel Stadium. This is going to be an interesting game. Of the last few outings, we have seen earlier this year GWS fall by 4 points. We then had GWS at home by a bigger margin, and then prior to that as well at Marvel, GWS walked away with a very big win. I'm going to go GWS here. To my detriment, maybe. So, tipsters, this is how we're looking. We're going the Bulldogs by 13 later tonight. Geelong, Melbourne, West Coast Sydney, Brisbane, and GWS. Those games from North Melbourne down, tentative to change given any ins or outs that could sway my way. But I think the 3 that we've loaded here, Bulldogs, Cats, and the Demons, I think we're very solidified in that particular run. Do hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you took the time to hit that like button down below. It tells YouTube and their algorithm that I'm doing something right around here and maybe deserve a little bit of a push. And if you want to get on board the community we are building slowly but surely, I would appreciate you taking the time to hit that subscribe button as well. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Good luck to your teams this weekend, provided they're not sitting on the bye. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.